All right, so today the big question, we're asking you, do you support attempts by Jubilee MPs to have Kenya pull out of the ICC? I'm going to be sampling some of your views as we go along, but right now I'm joined by two gentlemen from that coalition, the Jubilee Coalition. To introduce them, in my immediate right, Kabando wa Kabando. Member of Parliament, Mukuruwieni, thank you very much for making time for us this morning. And Stephen Sang, Senator, Nandi County, thank you both.
Thank you.
This is not the first time we're having attempts to get Kenya out of the ICC, out of the Rome Statute. What makes this attempt different?
Thank you. I think we have seen the progress of the case at the ICC. Initially, people expected that Kenya was not going to cooperate at the, with the International Criminal Court. Right. But we have seen the Deputy President, the President, and the entire Kenyan case, and the suspects in the Kenyan case supporting and cooperating with the court. But what are we getting as Kenyans? We are seeing a situation whereby the court is really not reciprocating. We are cooperating with the court. All the conditions that were issued by the ICC were complied with by the the three suspects, but progressively we are seeing a tendency by the court to take for granted the kind of cooperation that Kenya is giving. When you say not reciprocating, what exactly are you talking about? We have seen two instances. One, there have been applications to have the cases shifted to Arusha and to Kenya. And we have seen that even within the courts, the decision that was made by the court was not unanimous. And one of the strongest petitions against the transfer of cases from The Hague to Kenya or Arusha was based on a petition by some NGO, AFRICOG and the others. So we are asking ourselves, if the court, if the suspects and the country has cooperated with the ICC all this long, why is the court finding it difficult to also cooperate with us and agree and understand the circumstances under which the Kenyan case is under which we are operating right now is different. Initially we had William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta as individuals. Now they are heads of state and the deputy head of state. The question is, we have to, the court cannot operate in a vacuum. We have to understand the circumstances under which we are operating. And therefore, we have to be considerate. But we think that the court, on the face of, Kenya and the suspects cooperating, the court is not really reciprocating. Well, let me come to you, Kabando, because this is an independent court, would like, to believe. And the thing is, one of the reasons they gave, it was put on a vote to move the cases or not. And it missed by one vote to move the cases to Tanzania or to Kenya. And one of the reasons cited was because of the politicization of the issue. Isn't this further politicization? Are you not alienating yourselves as members of the Jubilee Coalition supporting the president and the deputy even more with this news onslaught to push the cases?
First is to thank my colleague for very elaborate explanation of the foundation. Yeah. The senator has said it all. Yeah. Alienating ourselves from who? You see, today I see a lot of publicity all around about the mobility of East African bloc, to solidify our purposeful union towards economic consolidation for the benefit of the people of East Africa. We are talking about blocks. Internationally, we are talking about European Union, we are talking about African Union, we are talking about the East African bloc. Uganda, on behalf of the East African region, did submit a motion to the African Union. And in May this year, the ordinary session, the 21st ordinary session of the African Union's heads of state and government did pass a resolution. And we are talking about Africa speaking. And everybody in the world now agrees that Africa is the present and the future of the global leadership, particularly on wealth creation and empowerment of its own people. I was just watching this Morning Express, and I heard Steve Biko talk about, the culture of saving, getting young people to focus on something that is very positive. And this is what, this is what we are focusing. And while we are doing that as East Africans and as Africans, getting ourselves on the front of the global stage, a few people out there still think that Africa is a marginal continent that should be subjected to rules and regulations that themselves should not be subjected to. For instance, ask yourself, simple question. What authority, what basis does the United States of America have on ICC? They are not members. They are not signatories. You know, Russia, we understand they are not. China, we understand they are not. And you know, if today China pulls out its investment from New York or Washington, D.C., those states and the federation that is USA will collapse. Because China is purposeful when they started their questions. Now, Kenya is a leader in East and Central African region. In terms of investment, we are the hub. Anybody traveling in Nairobi will see there's an emerging and celebrated democracy. And the past decade has seen us going to the front.
So what are you saying?
So what I'm saying is that there's so much focus on politicizing and stigmatizing Africa and not listening to the voice of Africa. You know, these people who are talking, by the way, we don't forget, just the other day, less than 20 years ago, Britain and America, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan were the campaigners for the sustaining of apartheid regime against the Nelson Mandela. But today we see London rushing to put a statue of Mandela in London streets. When Mandela was visiting America, just the other day, the US Secretary of State had to make a very historic action to downgrade Nelson Mandela and the foreign minister from the list of terrorists. So even when Mandela was released from prison from Robben Island in 1990, United States of America still retained this African icon as a terrorist.
Okay.
And this is what they are trying to do to our president and deputy president. Shame on them.
Okay, let's bring this politicization question back home. Because the concern here is that the politicization is by forces, people, parties here at home. So far, Ruto and the president have cooperated and have expressed their desire to continue doing so. But attempts such as this, to still pull out of the ICC, then beg the question, is this a move that will lead towards future lack or non-cooperation? Are you not concerned that by such a move by yourselves trying to get out of the Rome Statute, that could be then interpreted by the same court which you're trying to show, and the president and the deputy president have kept saying, we are going to cooperate, we maintain that. But then at the same time, on the other hand, their people are trying to, work around getting out of the ICC.
No, I think that we need to put this into context in the sense that we, the cooperation by William Ruto and His Excellency the President is unquestionable. I mean, on 10th, William Ruto, the Deputy President, will be traveling to The Hague. That is not in question, but we want to make a statement as a country that we are unhappy with the way the court is managing the Kenyan case. And that is why if the court could listen to some of the petitions from NGOs, how much more should they listen to Kenyan Parliament, the Senate and the National Assembly? We are just saying that we thought initially that the court is not subject to manipulation, but the fact that the court can make decisions based on petitions and some of these positions taken by Nairobi-based NGOs. We need to make a statement as a country, and maybe we are looking at considering the options of pulling out of the ICC. We may also pass a resolution, indicating to The Hague that we want the cases transferred to Kenya. If they decided, if that decision was made based on a petition by an NGO, that means they should be able to listen more to the Kenyan Parliament, speaking in unison. So we are really considering all this, and we need to know that this is a reactionary move. Initially, I think that the ICC, as a matter of fact, may have anticipated that Kenya was not going to cooperate with them. To their surprise, we are seeing the president, the deputy, cooperating with them, and this could be based on because we need to be honest with ourselves. We cannot expect this country to run normally with the president and the deputy together at The Hague. There was an application by the deputy president to have his case staggered. That position, that application was granted only to be overturned later on. You ask yourself, what were the reasons behind, the decision by the court? And this doesn't make sense. And because this was an application that was already agreed upon, that was made an application by the defense. It was, supported by the victims, lawyers. It was supported by the prosecutor himself. So you ask yourself, under what basis would the court deny the staggering of the case?
But the prosecutor is the one that appealed.
No, on this particular one, on the issue of staggering the case, the prosecutor agreed. They only said, let us stagger it within 3 weeks.
Which was granted.
No, it was,
they staggered it to 3 weeks because Ruto is going away for 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks.
The prosecution was against, they said, we don't have a problem with staggering, just not 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Let's do 3 weeks so that one witness can be on the stand throughout, finish their testimony and be done.
Yeah.
So in essence, the prosecution's wish was granted, but also Ruto's, but it's only that he's there for a longer time.
3 weeks, yes.
3 weeks.
Yeah, and this is, you have 3 weeks, a break of 10 days, then another 3 weeks. Of course, if you look at the schedule that was given by the prosecutor, he needs 1.5 weeks for every witness. If you look at that, that means it would run into the hearing of the president. So we are facing a situation that we are likely to have a constitutional crisis in this country. And I think Kenyans are not going to forgive the Kenyan parliament if we are not going to sit down and look at this thing in totality and ask ourselves, is this the direction that we want to drive this country?
Right.
But more importantly, I think the International Criminal Court has to look at the Kenyan case from the presence of the fact that there was a major event in this country on 4th of March. You cannot treat this case the same way you treated before the elections, because you are talking about...
But that is dragging the ICC to become politicized. Why should it consider political happenings in the country? And over the prosecution has said they are facts, but they've said they are illegal. This is a legal process.
Yeah.
So they're not undermined, they're not influenced by the happenings politically. And they've constantly said that, repeating that they want to be separated. They want to separate the two issues. So why do you want them to rope them in and then at the same time argue that it's the same political influences from other countries that are influencing them? Will you win? It's not going to be...
we want to be very candid and honest.
Yes.
That, the events of March 4th, and we know the reasons why we are at The Hague is because of a number of issues. Issues of historical land injustices, the cases and the issues that have faced this country. That is why Kenyans have always had to find ourselves, fighting in this country. We now have a government, the Jubilee government, attempting to address the root causes of the issues that took us to The Hague. And it would be quite irresponsible for the court not to consider the attempts that are being made within our country to address some of these issues once and for all. You've seen the president in the last 1 week addressing issues of land issues at the coast. And steps, we are now implementing devolution in this country. Okay. We cannot, as a court, the court cannot close its eyes to the fact that we are trying to address the root causes of the issues that took us to The Hague. And, if the court is interested in dealing with these issues and ensuring that we have a peaceful Kenya, moving forward, then we should be alive to the attempts that are being made by this country to address some of these issues.
Let me bring in Kabando again. The court team, opposition, has said that this question of pulling out of the ICC should not be left up to politicians, the legislators, the Senate, that it should be taken back to Kenyans on a referendum, that they should decide. What do you think about that?
3 things. Number one, Africa, the NGO you are talking about, its leader, Gladio Lotieno, is one who submitted a petition. Africa is one that went to court. These busy bodies, they went to court to join CORD in the petition. So can you see the alliance? It's a very unholy alliance. Africa went to challenge the presidency of Ruto when it was decisively mandated by the people in a free and fair democratic election, historic, and a new constitution. Now, Africa, just in a very thinly veiled conspiracy, because we know the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, when it documented and produced a report on the post-election violence, it was very selective in the listing. It was political vindictiveness and the malice that was at play. I was in last parliament, and I can tell you this. We have the report. Right. Number two, we had the concentration camps in this country during the colonial period. We had the Samoeo of that time, the namesake of William Ruto. And we had the father of Uhuru in prison for nearly a decade because of being at the front of the Mau Mau War. Even Uhuru's mother was at Kamite prison.
Right.
A young gracious lady under 20 years, newlywed. And now we have the concentration camps in America. Yet America is not a signatory of ICC. What I'm talking about is that this is a new colonial conspiracy, and the leadership of CORD should be forewarned. I don't think they have.
But what harm is it?
Don't cut me from there. The leadership of CORD is guilty of conspiracy with ICC, with Americans, and other new colonial sulking guys. People who are very bitter. They did not get what they wanted. On March 4th, Kenyans decided, and we cannot ignore African Union. You know, we have an international assembly called the European Union, ACP, that is Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific. Right. We, with the Caribbeans and the guys from Pacific, are united in one assembly in order to negotiate issues of international trade and international governance with Europe. And even in those assemblies, we know that ACP countries are always faced with a lot of resistance when it comes to initiatives to empower our own people.
Okay, that's granted, Kabando.
Yes.
Why not still take it to the people? Why not the people of Kenya decide?
Let me ask you.
Isn't it a legitimate...
Am I not a person of Kenya?
Yes, you are. But they want the entire country deciding, not a few members. That's the debate, that's the argument.
The man sitting on my right is one of the youngest leaders in the continent, duly elected by a whole county as a senator, as a young person. Right. Therefore, when he speaks, he represents a whole county. Old people of 100 years. And
are you afraid you lose in such a situation if you went to a referendum this question? Because why not?
About the by the way, when you talk about the referendum, madam,
if that question...
This referendum debate is not about devolution, and is not about resources. You know, these guys are talking about consumption. We cannot hear them talk about production. They are just talking about consuming what is being produced, but not production. The economics of production should be more important than the economics of consumption.
Let's go back to our course of our discussion.
Yes.
Because if you're going to argue, as you have, that's fine, he's an elected member, and so he should make that decision on behalf of all those people.
Course.
Then you'd be perhaps on also the bandwagon of saying that particular members should also sit together and in the presidential system that is being proposed.
No. We are talking about...
Yes, I'm just saying.
We are duly elected now.
Why not let the people weigh in on this matter?
I think the Constitution tells us how we can be able to pull out of the ICC.
Right.
It doesn't say we go to the referendum. It says that the same way we ratify Kenya's treaties in Kenya is the same way. I mean, and treaties are ratified through Parliament. So we cannot, you cannot suggest extra constitutional, means of pulling out of the ICC. But still, I mean, and because I know that is the statement of going through a referendum is a political question. Okay. How many Kenyans voted for Uhuru and Ruto, knowing very well that they have the issues?
Yes.
If you subject this thing to the referendum, I can assure you we are not going to get less than what we got in the last elections. And therefore, this is already something that you can tell and you can perceive Kenyans' position on the same.
Okay, many Kenyans out there watching this as it unfolds, this push by yourselves and the ones that have been there before. The biggest concern and question, and maybe you can clarify, if Kenya is successful in pulling out of the Rome Statute, does that automatically end the cases against Uhuru, Ruto, Sam?
Let me be quick, Senator Sir. Let me be very quick on this one. The 10th Parliament unanimously, as one, passed a motion by one Isaac Ruto to pull out Kenya from ICC. But a conspiracy developed because it was near elections that prevented a bill from being drafted for that motion that was approved by the National Assembly in the 10th Parliament barely a year ago to be passed. You know what it means? It means that what we are trying to do now as the 10th Parliament in conjunction with the Senate is to escalate that matter, to enhance that matter, to do that which was not done at the sunset of the last Parliament. And therefore, this is a move that is legitimate, that is in order, that will resolve. And what the Senator has said, and this is what Kenyans know, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto were already indicted by the Hague. Kenyans voted for the Ruto presidency fully aware that they had the cases at The Hague. That meant that the election of Uhuru and Ruto, the Uhuruto presidency, was also a very resounding disapproval of the racist, discriminatory.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
ICC.
Let's go back to that question, because many Kenyans, some think that even if that happens, if Kenya is successful in pulling out, if your push is successful, then it would mean the end of the cases. Is that the case? Can you clarify that for Kenyans?
Legally speaking, Kenya pulling out of the ICC may not end the cases,
right.
Upfront. That is a fact. I mean, if you look at the Rome Statute, that is not the case. But the question is, we would have sent a message. And I think, the 3 Kenyans who are facing, charges at the ICC should be the last of the Kenyans that will be able to face that kind of humiliation at the International Court. Because we supported the International Court, we joined and ratified the Rome Statute, knowing that ICC would be an independent court insulated from political machinations at the international level. But what we have been treated to, and we now agree with the United States of America and China and Russia and all the other countries who actually, in their wisdom then decided that they were not going to be part of the ICC. We now see the point. And I think as a country, irrespective of whether our move would end the cases or not, it is important for us to make a statement and fair enough, pull ourselves from this process. So, and then our president and the deputy can concentrate in addressing the root causes. Because I know if we give the Jubilee government a period of 10 years, 20 years to deal with all these issues that have caused Kenyans to fight, we will never have a reason to go to the ICC. Okay. So it may not end the cases, but I think it is a strong message, and we do not want to subject any other Kenyan into the kind of humiliation that our president and the deputy are.
Another very key question is on them being away from the country. The schedule for the deputy president is out. He leaves on the 10th, he's in trial, he's in court for about a month almost, because it's 3 weeks, 5 days, so 25 days in total. 9 days break and then again 3 weeks. So he's away for almost 44 days, actually a total of 44 days. And that's prior to Uhuru Kenyatta's case beginning. So at one point, they might both be at The Hague. We don't know. It depends on Uhuru Kenyatta's schedule. So the biggest concern has been, will this then create this vacuum in the leadership?
Let's say this, that we are holding and maintaining that ICC is a political process. And ICC is declining to give some concessions, even when they are very logical, very reasonable, because it's part of an international conspiracy. And the leadership of CORD cannot get out of this. That's why they are so agitated, even when the presidency is dedicated, going to China for investment, going to Dubai for investment, coming back to Kenya. Let me finish this sentence. Coming back to Kenya and starting giving title deeds. You start insulting the presidency that they are clerks. Yet when Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto spend time sweeping the street of Nairobi, joining street people and villagers to clean the city, you don't complain that they are sweepers. But when they give title deeds to Kenyans who are squatters.
The question of a vacuum, Kabando, when they are both at the ICC, president and deputy president, what happens to the country without those two?
I'm bringing that point home.
Yes.
That this country is not going to have a vacuum. And if anybody is waiting for the government to collapse because of the ICC case, we are dealing with this case legally, and therefore the president and the deputy president are complying, but we have also said we are dealing with this matter politically. Because we control the Senate, we also control the National Assembly. And also we are saying it may worry some individuals, and Kenyans are duly concerned that the absence of the president and the deputy president can cause a vacuum. But as I said, and I repeat, we control the National Assembly, we control the Senate.
But that is not enough,
Let
me bring you in.
The Constitution is
that
very clear.
Control.
The Constitution is very clear. There isn't a vacancy. The president is Jubilee. The deputy president is Jubilee. The speaker of the National Assembly is Jubilee. The speaker of the Senate is Jubilee.
Granted, but they are not the president and the deputy president. At the end of the day, just at the face of it, if the president and deputy president are out of the country facing charges of crimes against humanity,
the speaker of the National Assembly,
fine,
is Jubilee. Do you read the Constitution? Anybody reading the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya knows that in very unlikely event of the president and the deputy president being away. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Mutuli, overwhelmingly voted for by Jubilee. So people can sulk, they can complain. Whether it goes to the Senate, to the presidency, or to the National Assembly, Jubilee is in control.
The confidence numbers for Uhuru Kenyatta were up a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago. What do you think this will do if, in the case, they're both away? Will that waver?
Who gave that opinion? The confidence levels of Uhuru Kenyatta has always been up since March 4th, and now that he's at coast, they are tripling every day.
Yeah, but and very important, the issue that Mheshimiwa Kabando has mentioned, that at the end of the day, this is not going to be a vacuum.
Yes.
The Constitution is very clear. When you do not have the president, then you have the deputy. When the deputy is not there, then you have the Speaker of the National Assembly, go on and on. But I don't think that we are going to get to the level, and it would be unforgivable for the Kenyan Parliament to allow a situation whereby the president and the deputy are going, both of them are going to be away at The Hague. And that is why I think a lot of the issues, I mean, you guys are just highlighting the fact that we want to pull out of the ICC, but we also want to tell the ICC, I mean, that is why I was making this resolution, that within the period that the deputy president will be at the ICC and before the cases of the president starts, we should be able to communicate to the ICC that we cannot afford as a country to have both of our two leaders at The Hague. And we hope that the ICC, in terms of rescheduling the cases, would be able to be alive to this fact. And if they are not, we are not even losing, I mean, we are not saying that we can't even decide that, you know, they go to hell with, you know, the cases. I mean, finally, we can have the president and the deputy not attending the, you know, the process, because we are interested in justice. And if we realize that the court is not in the process of dispensing justice, then why should we subject ourselves to the court?
Our time is up. We have to continue with the show, but I'll ask you both, are you traveling with the deputy president to The Hague? We understand about 50 to 60 members will be traveling. And if so, who's financing that?
Before you ask that question,
a very quick yes or no.
His maternal grandmother, just because of ICC.
Are you traveling to
Yes, just because of ICC. And he refused to come to Kogero because of ICC, and America is not a signatory. But he is living with George W. Bush, who could be actually...
That's a whole discussion for another day.
We want to insist.
Will you be accompanying the deputy president?
There's an international conspiracy between CORD, ICC, and sulking Western people. Whether we are traveling or not, is neither here nor there.
Will you be accompanying him?
A lot of us will be accompanying the president at different times. I mean, the deputy and the president. And we are financing that ourselves.
Not on the taxpayers.
Can I concede?
Yes.
The people of Mukuruwieni last Friday met somewhere in Nyeri and contributed 280,000 shillings for my expenses to join the deputy president at The Hague. I want to go yesterday.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. A pleasure talking to you both. And thank you for all your insights on this debate. Of course, the story that continues to develop, and here at KTN will continue to follow it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you
for your time. We appreciate. All right, Kabando, Member of Parliament, Mukuruwieni, and Stephen Sang, Senator, Nandi County, talking to us this morning. Of course, it's all about the question of whether you support the move and attempts by the Jubilee members of Parliament to have Kenya pull out of the ICC. William Ruto, the deputy president, his case begins, or his trial begins on the 10th of September. That's just a few days from now. Let's wait to see how all this unfolds in coming days. And you can trust KTN will be following this story very closely for you. We'll be bringing you the very latest. We have our reporters on the ground for all this.